Okay, this is my example of my guided reading lesson. Today we are going to work on the comprehension strategy of predicting and inferring. I'll start our guided reading group by reading a poem called My Teacher Ate My Homework. All of the poems that we are reading today are called giggle poetry. You will notice that they all tend to be silly. This is my demonstration of fluency. My teacher ate my homework, which I thought was rather odd. He sniffed at it and smiled with an approving sort of nod. He took a little nibble. It's unusual but true. Then he had a somewhat larger bite and gave a thoughtful chew. I think he must have liked it, for he really went to town. He gobbled it with gusto, and he wolfed the whole thing down. He licked off all his fingers, gave a burp, and said, "You pass." I guess that's how they grade you when you're in cooking class. Alright, so I'm going to demonstrate predicting and inferring. I will also be demonstrating how to use context clues to infer the definition of unknown vocabularies. As I do my demonstration, I want you to think about the different strategies that I am using to predict and infer. I want you to try this when you predict for your lesson. I'm going to give you a graphic organizer to use while predicting your poem. Here's the graphic organizer. And I'm also going to give you one to use while inferring what vocabulary words mean. So here's the graphic organizer for vocabulary words. As I look at the title of this poem, I see that it's called My Teacher Ate My Homework. I know I need a little bit more information than this to predict what this poem is about. I won't be able to predict of the author's purpose if I only use the title and the picture. I'll read the first stanza before I predict. My teacher ate my homework, which I thought was rather odd. He sniffed at it and smiled with an approving sort of nod. I have never heard the word approving before. I'm going to highlight the word approving so I can remember to go look it up later. I will write the word approving in my graphic organizer. Now what can I use to infer what improving means? I'm going to use the context clues. Let me read the whole sentence. He sniffed at it and smiled with an approving sort of nod. Well, approving seems to be describing the nod. People nod when they are agreeing with something or saying yes to something. Maybe approving means that the teacher agrees to eat the homework, or he thinks the homework is good enough to eat. I will figure out the rest of my graphic organizer with this information. So I predict that it means he wants to eat the thing, or he's saying it's okay to eat it, and I use context clues. Now back to predicting. After reading the first stanza, I predict this poem is going to be about a teacher eating a student's homework. I notice the poem is in first person, so the student is going to be the one telling the story. Let me write this down. So in the first stanza, I predict that it's going to be about a teacher eating a student's work or homework, and that the student is telling the story, not the teacher. Now let me read my second stanza. He took a little nibble, it's unusual but true, then had a somewhat larger bite and gave a thoughtful chew. While I was reading, I noticed that I didn't know the word nibble. Let me highlight it. There we go. I kept on reading to see if I could use my context clues to define the word nibble. When I kept on reading, I came across the line, then he had a somewhat larger bite. This sentence showed me that he must have had 2 bites of homework and the second bite was bigger. If the second bite was bigger, that means the first bite must have been the nibble, which means nibble must be something small, maybe a small type of bite. Let me write that in my graphic organizer. Now back to predicting for my poem. I'm a little confused now. I can't decide what I think is going to happen next. He already talked about how the teacher has eaten his homework. What else could he talk about? The only thing I can think of is that the rest of the poem will be about if he liked the way the homework tasted or not. I will write this down in my graphic organizer. I am feeling confident in my predicting and inferring, so I'm going to read the rest of the poem. Okay, I'm done writing in my graphic organizer. Here's the rest of the poem. I think he must have liked it, for he really went to town. He gobbled it with gusto, and he wolfed the whole thing down. He licked off all his fingers, gave a burp, and said, "You pass." I guess that's how they grade you when you're in cooking class. Let me highlight some words in here that I didn't know. Oh, what? I think that's the only one. I don't know what it means to whoop something down. I highlighted the word "whooped" in this poem. The poem says he gobbled it with gusto and he whooped the whole thing down. I know that gobbled means eat it really, really, really fast. So maybe since he whooped means the same thing. In the sentence they were talking about eating the homework. I made sure to highlight this and write in my graphic organizer. Graphic organizer? Whooped. Maybe eating really fast or eating something. And I use my context clues to help me. I was so caught off guard at the end of the poem when it said cooking class. This whole time I pictured in my head the teacher eating a piece of paper. I predicted the teacher was eating the student's homework in form of a paper. I never crossed my mind that the student was taking a cooking class. I thought that was really creative. Although I did not make the correct prediction, that was not the purpose of this activity. My purpose was to use predicting and inferring to help me better understand this poem. The graphic organizers were used to help me organize my thoughts. I wanted. Now let's talk about predicting and inferring. What did you notice me doing while I read this poem?